competition policy is a form of government regulation of business, but it's not a heavy-handed, sectoral-specific regulation of business that involves setting prices or quantities or who can supply. It's more a setting of rules of the game. The objectives of competition policy are to foster competitive markets, free, open, competitive markets. And we value competition because we think competition is a great generator of efficiency. Competition makes firms efficient. It makes them price low and makes products more generally available because of the lower prices and wider distribution. So we like competition as a means to an end, and the end is efficiency. And when we use our resources efficiently, there's more wealth for everyone. The main elements of a modern competition law are really three. They are rules against price fixing, that is cartel behavior, agreements between firms, secret agreements generally, to raise prices, hurting consumers, of course. And that is the most universally despised behavior in competition policy. It's just so clearly bad that virtually every country has rules against that kind of behavior. The second main category of competition policy regulations are related to what we might call an abuse of a dominant position. In some industries, you will get firms that are very large, maybe quite entrenched, very difficult for small firms to compete against them, or to enter the market to compete against them. And these firms, you don't necessarily want to punish them just for being big. We generally don't want to do that. But once they get big, there are sometimes things they can do that distort competition and prevent the emergence of new competitors. And then the third general category is merger review, because in many cases firms come to dominate markets not just by being better and winning more and more customers, but by merging with their rivals. So mergers can lead markets to become very concentrated, with the result that the remaining few firms are able to set high prices without fear of competition from each other or from new entrants. This is a very exciting time for competition policy in Kenya, and I'm just very happy to be here to be able to talk to some of the people involved in the policy here. Kenya has a new competition law as of 2010. It is, I think, a very sound law, very modern in its outlook, incorporates many of the best practices that have been learned through the experience of many other countries. As I say, there's over 100 countries with laws. They've borrowed extensively from some European experience, some South African experience, and then little bits from other places where they think it would work. It definitely has Kenyan characteristics. You can see some provisions in the law that are meant to address particular historical issues in Kenya, and that makes sense. Every country's competition law reflects the country a little bit itself, and its history and its own economy. I'm very pleased that Strathmore is taking a leadership position in this space. One of the challenges that you have when a country adopts a new law and then builds a new authority to enforce the law is you start often with no one in the country knowing anything. You know, it's new. So they haven't been teaching it in the competition policy in the universities here generally. There aren't economists in the country that have been used to working on competition cases. And this is true everywhere. It's just natural. If it's new to your country, you're going to start with a very low information base. And I think Strathmore Business School has seen this and sees a place for itself in training people to participate actively in this sector. They may be training students who may go to work for the competition authority now that they know something about competition authority. They may just be training people who will work inside businesses in regulatory offices to help the businesses navigate the new competition laws and not get into trouble unnecessarily. They may end up becoming consultants for consulting firms here in Nairobi or elsewhere in Kenya, providing advice on an as-needed basis to companies or to the competition authority. So I'm very pleased that Strathmore has seen this opportunity and through their public policy program has developed courses in competition policy to train students, and we've had some courses to even train faculty and graduate students in competition policy. So I do see and research has also begun. That's another thing that you don't have. If you don't have a competition policy, no one does research in competition policy. And every country needs its own research because competition policy is always going to be different. Be many similarities country to country, but there will also be differences, and so you need some domestic capacity thinking about competition policy, and that has started here as well with research on the new Kenyan competition law. Competition policy doesn't help everybody. You know, if you are the large dominant firms and you're used to behaving in a certain way, like sitting down with your competitors and agreeing on prices, or being very aggressive against new entrants and driving them out of business, moving them out of town, competition law is going to restrict your ability to behave that way, and if that's the way you're comfortable, you'll probably resist. But that does mean that one of the competition authority's first jobs, and this is common with new authorities, is what we call advocacy. The competition authority has to get out and has to talk. You don't just immediately start charging people and fining them. You start by educating them. You start by saying, these are the new rules. This is the kind of behavior that's going to be tolerated going forward. If you have any questions, you come and you talk to us and we'll give you advice so that you can avoid trouble. And hopefully, if the competition authority, and it is doing that, it's going out and meeting with business groups, meeting with large companies, explaining to them what the new Competition Act is about, why it's there, how they intend to enforce it. They're producing a lot of documents that try to provide some clarity, because a law can always be a bit challenging to read and interpret, and so a competition authority usually has to supplement the law with guidelines, things that sort of explain in more detail how they're going to review mergers or how they're going to investigate cartels, and when they're going to go for tough penalties and when they're just going to be happy with gentle discussions and persuasion. And these things are coming out. The Competition Authority of Kenya has issued a number of guidelines, and there'll be more of those coming. One is that it has to be very independent of government. The early signs for the Kenyan Competition Authority to me are very positive. It does seem to have quite a bit of independence. That doesn't guarantee that there'll be no corruption, but it does limit the ability of politicians to affect the decisions of the authority. If the independence of a particular authority was threatened, it would be a big deal internationally, at least for this organization. So I think the Competition Authority and other members of the ICN do drive some strength from this international participation, for this sense that, because I think Kenya is proud to have such a good authority, such a good law, the buildings of a professional authority, and I suspect the government will take pains to preserve its independence, and I hope that will limit the opportunities for corruption. And in fact, a competition authority that's itself very independent is a good tool against corruption, because corruption can often take the form of deals between, say, politicians or different business people that basically take money from poor consumers or something like that. And the Competition Authority now has the ability to go and investigate those, and if it's independent, it's not by itself an anti-corruption agency specifically, but it could well be that some of the matters it starts to investigate under, say, abuse of dominance. There are little pockets of corruption in there that it's itself uncovering. So it actually could be part of the solution. The main two skill sets are economics and law. It is an area in which economists and lawyers work together extensively. So getting a degree in economics or a degree in business with a strong economics core to it, and microeconomics is the side of economics most relevant here. And the specific course called Industrial Organization is the microeconomics course that's kind of closest, gives you the tools that you most often use in competition policy. So economics is a very good place to start. But lawyers as well have an important role because we are enforcing a law. They become very important in determining processes and assuring fairness and alignment with other laws and rights and things like that. And so the economists often don't understand that. The economists, like I'm an economist, they see the truth and want to go to the truth, and it's the lawyers that have to say, wait, we've got to go through a process here. Maybe we'll get there, but we've got to produce some evidence, we've got to make arguments, we've got to persuade a judge who is not necessarily an economist with good arguments, and this is the way we have to go. We can't order them to provide this, the law doesn't allow us to do this, we can't do that, but we can do this. So lawyers and economists have to learn to work together in these files, and so both of those skill sets are useful. If you are a lawyer going into it, I would strongly urge you to get a course in economics, not to make you an economist, but there's a lot of jargon and a lot of even simple analytical tools that you would pick up in a kind of a first course in microeconomics that will be extremely useful, because the first course will tell you a little bit about how economists see markets working, particularly competitive markets and monopoly markets, which is sort of two extremes. And a lot of competition policy is about trying to get markets that look more like monopoly markets and make them look more like those competitive markets. So a lawyer strongly urge you to try to get at least one course in microeconomics.